all set. Thanks for bringing everybody. Commissioner Rippon can be intimidated, but Commissioner Cook and I have been around a long time. Let's get started. This is the sheriff's budget hearing. It's 2 o'clock. No, I'm sorry, it's 1300. Sheriff, it's all yours.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Again, I'm Brian Hill, Sheriff, Shawnee County Sheriff's Department. This is my first budget hearing, and I will be honest, I'm just kind of riding the horse that was saddled for me when I got there. And the folks that you see out here has been putting in a lot of hard work for several weeks getting the budget ready. Some things I have noticed since I've taken over as a sheriff of Shawnee County, we've really focused on trying to partnership with the other agencies. And currently, I believe we have the best working relationship with TPD, 501, Rossville, Silver Lake, MTA, and Auburn than they've had in years, to be quite honest with you. We've had chiefs meetings with those individuals, and we are working on sharing intel so that we can better combat crime all the way across Shawnee County and not have it just broken up in the small little municipalities. What we have noticed also is currently we're trying out a program that's a Socrata crime program, which has allowed us the ability to pull up crime stats immediately after they've been entered and not take 4 or 5 people weeks to put those things together. It's a great program that showed us immediate hotspots, times that these crimes are occurring, the days they're occurring, and it's starting to allow us to have a focused enforcement action to better police the county than I believe has occurred in the past. One of the things I've noticed is the crime increase over the last several years in Shawnee County. It just gradually went up. I believe we're around 35% more than we were 4 to 5 years ago. Call loads up. I know with I keep a close watch with Vallejo and some of the rehab places, because when those folks start getting busy, so do we. And currently we have pretty much still have a huge meth epidemic in Shawnee County that we're having to combat. And along with those are the burglaries go up and a lot of the thefts go up. So we're trying to work more closely. I've talked to DA Kage with the court. We really want to be on board with some of the drug court things and give options other than locking people up, but first we have to catch them so they're not doing all these nefarious things in the community. And as we went through the budget, we've seen an increase in the crime. And the one thing that really I noticed was when they're going to have some charts that they're going to go through here. When you see this pie graph, 90% of the sheriff's budget is salaries. And honestly, over the last 5 years, the operational side of the sheriff's budget has decreased a little bit. In the last couple of years, it's been the same, and we haven't increased that with this budget as well. I think there might be some increases. I'm sure there are here. Expected gas hikes and things along those lines. My only goal here as the sheriff is I want to combat crime. I want to be a good steward of the monies that you folks give us. And at the end of the year, when those monies are not used efficiently, we plan on returning those into an operational fund to you guys, or however we can work that out into the next year's budget. So that's where we're trying to go with this. And I know Under Sheriff Semeka has put a lot of time in. I'm going to let him go through these slides with you. And also, I'd like to go ahead and acknowledge Captain Hubler's chest sign is no longer correct, because he is now Major Hubler with Shawnee County Sheriff's Office. So we'd like to congratulate him in his new appointment. And at this time, I'll turn it over to you, Under Sheriff.
Thank you, Sheriff. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Under Sheriff Jay Semeka. As you see in the gallery, a lot of folks. These folks are some of our staff officers and line officers, and this is a collaborative effort. Okay, this is widespread. The scope is from our newest deputy all the way to the sheriff when it comes to the budget, because it affects all of us and how we operate. So the important piece is that You will see strength in numbers, and you will see shared understanding in our office. You will see transparency, and that is what we want to get across today, is that shared understanding, not only internally, but also we're building partnership capacity externally. So we'll go ahead and begin here. Our first slide, as the sheriff stated, there is the appearance, at least through statistical data, that crime is up a little bit. So on the left side of this, you'll see the 2018 statistics, basically incoming calls, the warrants that we get, the process papers we get. That's stuff that we have to do statutorily as a sheriff's office. But the other thing we have to do is be very, very cognizant of where crime is occurring in our community and what the trends are. So the graph on the right-hand side basically shows between 2017 and 2018 an increase, and then the blue bar is a projected for 2019, which in almost every quadrant except for the Northeast, you see an increase. As the sheriff stated already, and as you know, the 2019 operating budget was 90% salaries, wages, and benefits. The other 10%, which is broken up into services and supplies, is comprised of 10% of what we have left in the budget to actually do the job. So the historical budget expenses, 2016, 17, 18, and 19, you see on this graph an increase each year. Ever so slight. However, what you'll see on the next slide is the fact that the operating funds have decreased. So in 2015, 13%, 16, 11, 17, 10, 18, 10, 19, 10, and the projection is to stay right on track there. Largely, this is because when we remain flat and it costs us more money to fund salaries, then we have to cut somewhere. And where that comes from is operating expenses. So here's some historical data. These are the numbers that were represented in the graphs. So you can see the historical data, the lineage from 2014 through 2020, the payroll, how it has gone up, okay? By 20, we're already at $18.1 million, okay? And then the funds available for this budget is $2 million. So the increase in payroll is $1 million. The increase in expenditures is $219. If you don't have any questions, I'll move on to our capital improvement plan.
Well, I think it's important to note that from 2014 to 2020, the compensation has gone up, about 50% for the sheriff's office. I mean, it's part of the CBIZ study,
Correct.
But it is dramatic how we've invested in law enforcement in Shawnee County.
That is absolutely correct and noted. Commissioner, without the partnership between the Board of County Commissioners, the Fraternal Order of Police, the administration at the Sheriff's Office, this would not have come to fruition. In our opinions, humbly, long overdue, we are making significant strides in retaining, attracting qualified people, and making our agency just that much more professional. But you're absolutely correct.
Thank you, Undersheriff.
Okay. All right, so we needed to, by the order of the CIP protocol, have a 5-year plan in identifying some of those items that we would ask that the general fund as opposed to the allocated budget that the sheriff office has to operate. So the first one we have is the, excuse me, let me go back. MDTs. These are basically mobile data terminals, which are your computers, laptops that you can remove from your vehicle and hand carry wherever you want to. These are a very robust unit. They are not cheap. The recommended lifespan or refresh is about 4 years on these, and we did that in 2014. These are absolutely critical now. The technology, the advancements, how quickly we need to receive and disseminate information in the field has changed really how we operate. Most of the people in this room that wear a uniform have been doing this for quite some time. I know when I first started that we did not have this type of equipment, and to not have it, could you imagine not having a cell phone these days? This is a lifeline. Not only is your radio a lifeline, your cell phone, these MDTs can do a lot of work for you, and we can push officers out into the field, and they can just completely be autonomous in most areas, and that's where we want them. We want them out in the field. The fleet refresh. Not to get into history too much, we bought a lot of cars last year, but the plan is to not have to do that. We drive 1.5 million miles approximately each year. What we're asking is a fleet refresh of 10 new vehicles annually, not to come out of our budget, but these vehicles are essential to what we do. The service life is approximately 8 years or 130,000 miles. We have currently 150 vehicles in our fleet, and 13 of those are reaching their service life. The last bullet, the county can sell or transfer to other departments each year. Currently, we do that. If there's a need identified, we work with the other county entities to get them vehicles. Also, we have a program where we can sell those vehicles, and then the money is put back into our fund, and then we can use that towards other vehicles. But this is part of the annual CIP request for the next 5 years.
We go back to that.
Yes.
For a second.
Yes, Commissioner?
I would just have a question. One of the perks or differences between other law enforcement agencies and the Shawnee County Sheriff's Office is the vehicle is assigned the officer. I know that past sheriffs have had the position that they wanted their officers to be visible in the community. Part of that was their vehicle being at their home. But if we did not assign the vehicle to the officer, we would only need half as many vehicles, hypothetically, or not as many vehicles, because we would be able to share or rotate vehicles in and out, much like other law enforcement agencies do. And I don't know if there's any consideration or looking at that as down the road, or if we continue with the same policy that we've had.
Yes, the main concern, Commissioner, is that when you hot seat these vehicles, which is basically just a term meaning that somebody's going to be sitting in that driver's seat 24 hours a day or more than 8, it's going to mile them out very quickly. When you don't have ownership and accountability of your own equipment, sometimes you don't care about it as much. So when we assign a vehicle, that's like giving these officers their weapon, their ballistic vest, and their uniform. The idea is for ownership. And part of it, the perk, you're exactly right, is when you become a Shawnee County Sheriff's Officer, your office is mobile. You can get into that office right inside your driveway there, and you can be off and running very quickly. It is a response issue. It's a money issue, and we think that the money is best utilized by refreshing and allowing each deputy to take their vehicle home.
Well, I know a lot of agencies also look at the policy of leasing rather than just purchasing, knowing that they're going to have vehicles that as soon as they hit that 135,000 mile mark, they're just turning them in, and then the leasing agency is selling them. Much like we do with other, like Parks and Recreation. We went to a leasing option for Parks and Recreation. I don't know if that's something that we're looking at or if we're going to continue with the purchasing policy.
Yeah, good question, Commissioner. In fact, Major Hubler had looked into that in the past. He has very intimate knowledge of purchasing. He has been the services commander for quite some time, and he has looked. I'll let him speak on that.
Major Hubler, good afternoon. Almost said good morning. A lot of different things go into our fleet, and trying to keep it fresh and the right thing to do for the citizens of Shawnee County. 2 years ago, we looked into the lease, and it was not going to be cost effective. The buyback at that point was very expensive, and was for the type of driving that we do and the amount of miles that we put into vehicles. It was not going to be fiscally responsible at all to do a lease. for law enforcement. I know others do, but typically those are police departments that are also in a situation where they do hot seat their cars. I can tell you from being the services commander for years that our vehicles maintained have a life expectancy far outweigh. And we also have to look at the response. These vehicles are all response vehicles. And if we went to a hot seat, the other downside to that is our operations fleet at a maximum is 45. That's the amount of vehicles that we would be able to do that with. So you're really not going to get any more miles out of a vehicle, and you're going to have to buy more. You're going to have to buy those vehicles just more often. We can actually stretch it out. If you do the math, it's about every 15 years. And if you do the math, it doesn't really work out. But the way we rotate our vehicles and we take them from operations and then we put them into non-first responder officers that aren't working the street in process or warrants or detectives, we move our vehicles around to get as many miles as we possibly can out of them, and also have a very good maintenance program for those vehicles as well. So, but specifically to the lease, Ms. Greiner and I worked, matter of fact, she's the one that caught that it wasn't going to be fiscally responsible for the sheriff's office to lease. I'm sure it works out well for some other departments, but for the sheriff's office, it wasn't going to work out fiscally in the end.
Okay, all right, that's all I had, thank you.
Okay, our next item is the soft code system. We currently use Sprox as our process server software for processing documents. This new technology basically is a better way to operate externally. We find internal efficiencies with the soft code, but also externally. Bullet 3 allows us to interface with the state of Kansas court system. This software allows us to do that. This will alleviate a lot of man hours or personnel hours over the phone and through email, and the cost is $130,000.
And isn't this kind of what's happened with the e-filing with the courts, that we really, I mean, I know that I hear a lot of chatter among the attorneys in the courts about process server. When e-filing really kicked up, getting behind and adjusting over to the e-filing. Is it going to speed that process up?
Oh. Shane?
Yes.
Okay.
As you may or may not be aware, the state is switching to the Odyssey system, and it's projected to go live for the state of Kansas second quarter of 2020. As you all may be aware, sometimes software go lives get delayed a little bit, but we would like to be. Odyssey is also owned by Tyler, which owns New World now. Tyler's kind of taken over the world, for lack of a better way to put it. But the interface will automatically be there with softcode, because softcode is a Tyler product as well. And that interface will be seamless from the state system. It will help with the ease of filing on the e-files. The rest of the pieces, and then it'll constantly be in a Tyler product, and won't be having to go from one product to another and have to have custom interfaces.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Stay, you might want to stay standing. No, I'm just kidding. Let's see what we can do here. Okay, like I said, this is a group effort. You got to have subject matter experts to help you wade through some of this stuff, and these guys and gals certainly are. So here is our ballistic vest refresh, and as outlined on the graph, in 21, 22, 23, and 24, you see the number of vests that will be expired and how we want to do that. But one thing I want to note, our budget, we did enter 2020 CIP request for 40 new vests. However, we believe, at least now through some budget analysis, that we can fund those out of this year's, the 2019 existing budget. So that will be, in all likely circumstances, be removed from the CIP request. And the reason I keep it up there is because I think it's good to be transparent and find ways to better manage the way we do business. And this is going to be one of those, and I wanted to bring that up. We just have just a couple more.
Can I have,
Commissioner, yes,
I'm
Betty.
sorry, can I ask
No,
a question
you
while we're
can,
on this
but-
one?
But, okay. Try not
We
to
can get it
stump
there?
the, yeah, we got it. Go ahead.
Okay. So the 2020,
Uh-huh.
you plan on spending in 19?
We
So
would
there will
like
not-
to,
With,
yes.
hopefully.
Yes.
So then 2020 would be 0. Now, the other out years,
Mm-hmm.
21 through 24, you currently have that as being paid out of your budget.
Mm-hmm.
Would that stay the same?
Well, I don't know.
I think we
I
have
think
to
we,
see from year to year.
that's
But
kind of
that's
the.
and that's the.
It would be a budget request.
Yes,
Okay.
it would be a budget request.
Okay, thank you, that was all.
Yeah, thank you, Betty. Do you need to clarify something? We have a clarification request, okay?
On our original budget request, we had those $52,000 worth of bulletproof vest, or excuse me, ballistic vest,
Yeah.
in our budget request, and we have removed it. So it did recruit, we can reduce our request by 52,000,
Okay,
just so
thank
you
you.
know. And there's a slide in there, I'll show you,
Okay, thanks.
clarify.
Next, CIP for 2024 is a refresh. Not all of our fleet vehicles are used for patrol. This particular vehicle is used for animal control. And in 2024, we'd like to ask for a new ACO truck. Going backwards. Next, we have UPS batteries. These are critical to tower and to radio infrastructure. There are 3 tower sites that have been identified where the backup battery supply is reached its useful life. And with these 3 tower sites, the approximate cost is $75,000. We have this earmarked on the 2022 CIP request, and stand for any questions.
I see
Okay.
none.
Okay, that completes CIP requests. It's been long overdue that I have stood before you to talk about crime. And I have a few times in administrative communications given some brief overviews of property crime, because that is what we're seeing the most increase in. But I just want to briefly touch on these slides here with you commissioners, just to give you a shared understanding of what we're seeing and what we're working towards combating. So serious crimes, Part 1 crimes, they are the crimes that are reported, homicides, rapes, robberies, ags, batteries and assaults, burglaries and thefts. Those are your high-profile crimes per se. The person crimes are actually down, but this graph here shows what the sheriff was talking about earlier. 2017 through projected in 2019, you see a significant increase. I can tell you the last couple of months, though, the burglaries have been down, largely in part that we're throwing resources at that. We have identified the issue, and we are coming up with solutions to fight it. The other thing is getting the word out there to folks. I know the victims obviously aren't happy when something happens in their neighborhood, and we ask for their help in doing something about it. So the burglaries and thefts, it's painfully obvious here that you see this increase. And it was significant. 2017, we went from 875 to 1102. In 2000, that's a 26% increase. We want just the opposite. We want to reduce it yearly by 26%. And in 2019, because we had a really bad January, February, and March, and when I say bad, I mean there were a lot of property crimes being reported. So this is the increase in that. Commissioners by district, just to give you a brief overview of what we've seen year to date in your areas. The red areas are the hot spots. Okay, that's where the bulk of reported crimes have occurred. Like I said, it's property crimes makes up the vast majority of the crimes that are being reported. Earlier this year, the first quarter of this year, we were seeing on a weekly basis upwards of 20 reported burglaries. You see the high impact areas up north along Hunter's Ridge and across 75 Highway there. That's a heavy populated area of North Topeka. And then southeast, that red spot along there is the Peck Addition. And adjacent areas to that, you see south, the red spots, Montera, and then southwest, a area shared by both Commissioner Rapon and Commissioner Archer, the Sherwood District and adjacent areas there in. So you might ask, well, what are you doing about it? That's what I would ask. And we have identified first some of the issues and how to best, we're using our staff to come up with patrolling innovations, putting resources, allocating some of the personnel in that area using technology. We've had drone flights in some of these areas already, seeing if we can get an eye in the sky on some of this stuff. We put undercovers out there. We are getting the word out through social media repeatedly, over and over again, about see something, say something. And luckily, because of these efforts, property crimes, we've seen a reduction in those. So that's good news. And I'll continue to report, or somebody from the Sheriff's Office will, at least on a quarterly basis, crime trends and crime statistics. So that comes to our conclusion. I'm going to turn it back over to the Sheriff for closing remarks.
One of the things I'd like to note, Commissioners, is that when you saw the crime trends, we've begun having basically crime intel meetings to discuss what's going on and how can we address it. With technology, some things increase in price, but some things decrease. Major Hoopler was able to find drones at a reasonable price that had the flare night vision capabilities. And we was able to purchase 3 of those. We haven't got those in yet, but that was under $10,000 for 3 of those drones to come in. We're in the process of training. We'll have a total of 8 certified drone operators. And the plan is to utilize these drones, leave them in a roll call room so they could check them out, take them out in patrol in the hotspot areas, because what's truly happening is the sheriff's deputies are driving through these areas and you have people out there dodging headlights. They're hard to catch. They just hide in the dark till you drive by, and then they continue to steal stuff and move on. So with the drone deployments, that will allow the deputies to actually heat signature people out, moving around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning out at those locations, and we're hoping to even lower those crime stats tremendously by doing this kind of policing. So,
Questions, Commissioner Cook?
As you increase your staffing, the need for overtime should go down. Are we going to make an allocation of the budget to reduce our overall personnel costs? Looking at that?
I believe we've lowered that a little bit from last year's budget to this year's budget. And, you know, that's a number that I tell you I would really like to give those monies back toward the end of the year, depending on operationally what happens. I say that because investigation costs money. I know that we funded an investigation that probably cost us more than 40 hours overtime with some detectives. There was a KSNT lady who was being threatened, and it was really probably going to be an unsolved case. We funded that operation, identified this person, solved that case. He was arrested, and also as a result of that, figured out this same person had threatened to blow up the governor's house here several years ago, because he confessed to that as well, and the FBI come over to thank us for our response, and so we was able to pass that along. So I would hope our overtime would go down. But if we get into large-scale investigations, I know that sometimes those do suck monies to operate, and depending on what the investigation is, if it's narcotics related, I would hope we could tap into some federal OSADEF monies I've partnered back with the Marshal Service again, so that we have connections into their overtime operational funds. In fact, I think that was a real good partnership, because at the end of the days, those guys come in, pick up warrants from Shawnee County that are felonious warrants, and they're willing to pay overtime to our operators to execute warrants that we would honestly have to do if we wasn't partnered with them anyway. So that just made sense to me to go back into that partnership. So we will continue to be seeking out funds from our federal partners as well. The interdiction on the highway, I want to pick that up. Just since I've been the sheriff here, they've had several major interdictions. They got 99,000 and some odd dollars off. Now those monies are held up in procedures that we don't have access to, and sometimes that can be more than a year or so before we get those monies. But they took off that many loads in this short time. I-70 is just a corridor running drugs, not just through our community, but all the way through here. And I know that my phone has literally rang off the hook with concerned parents. We almost have an epidemic of these kids that are vaping marijuana. And the problem is, it's almost like hash oil. It's 80–90% concentrate. This kid's never done anything, and he does this one hit marijuana vape, and next thing you know, he's passed out in the nurse's office. That's happened a few times. I got parents calling me, they got 12, 13-year-old kids in rehab. And all that's going on there, it's almost like a bootleg operation. These people leave our community, drive to Colorado, hit all the dispensaries, buy everything they can legally through the course of a week, spend $5 grand, and come back with $30,000, $40,000 worth of product they can sell in the community. So interdicting those people on the highway is a priority, and they've knocked off several of those loads, $100,000, $200,000 worth of products. We've instructed our narcotics unit to try to do focused enforcement to people who are targeting the schools with that type of things. So we're making some good steps forward investigatively. And honestly, we will probably need a year to see if that pays off on that highway. I suspect it will. All the years I was involved in narcotics, there's a reason that there's a large amount of money in the forfeiture fund. It's because there's a lot of money moving through the narcotics trafficking world. So,
Given that you came from TPD and now over the sheriff's office, do you anticipate more cooperation between TPD and SNCO?
most assuredly. We've already combined a lot of the intel back and forth between the two agencies. I don't see us totally combining. I wouldn't really be for that, because the call load alone would suck everybody into the city and you'd have no coverage in the county. That's why it's important, this agreement that Chief Cochran and I signed, that are just priority response across the jurisdictional line, is just to secure a scene, to save lives, turn that scene back over, and go back to, you know, what you're supposed to be doing. And that benefits us as well, especially out in like the Sherwood area. There's TPD officers constantly out on Wanamaker, and you know, our guys are running, I don't know, over 80 square miles sometimes in their coverage. So oftentimes, if there's something that really broke loose out there, it may very well be a TPD guy who's closer. So letting dispatch out and priority calls, that is just, it just makes sense to me. It saves lives, and that's something we want to continue to do. But our partnership has greatly increased, because I was on TPD for a lot of years, and honestly, other than a little bit of crossover from the narcotics unit, wasn't a lot.
No.
So we hope to remedy that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Do we respond to calls inside city limits?
Only to the Part 1 calls that are life-threatening.
Okay. A question about the software. It's too small to see. What all does this do? Is this something you fill out when you have a crime? And
Well, it can do a
it's
lot.
reporting.
And I will let Major Hoopler tell you everything.
Okay.
Are you specifically referencing soft code?
Yes.
Soft code is specifically for our civil process unit. We currently use an in-house, Shawnee County IT developed, years ago, when we went away from the mainframe, they developed this program. It's called SPROX. Can't tell you exactly what it stands for right off. It's an acronym, but can't remember exactly what it stands for. But the soft code is just to handle those civil papers, the 45, 50,000 of those papers and that filing. And one of the biggest benefits to it is we'll be able to utilize the global name index within, when it says global, it's global locally. So we'll be able to use that global name index. People that have been booked into Shawnee County Jail, people that TPD has dealings with, people that the Topeka Fire Department has dealings with, they all go into the global name index. So if somebody gets a subpoena for XYZ, and that person also has a warrant for their arrest, it'll bring up a notification that person also has a warrant for their arrest, or that they're wanted in questioning, depending on the amount of information. And that's currently not available in the in-house product of SPROX.
What kind of crime are you seeing in some of the little towns, Auburn, Silver Lake? What's the, okay.
Commissioner, the same thing we see in other areas of Shawnee County. We are lucky in the aspect that all the small municipalities have marshals or city police officers. And like the sheriff said earlier, we are building that partnership capacity back up with those agencies, tying them in. In fact, we want their officers, whether they're the chief or one of their police officers, the sheriff's office is their office. They can come down, collaborate with our investigators, but by and large, it's property crime that you see in the small towns. But it is lesser in those small towns than it is in other areas of Shawnee County. If you compare Silver Lake and Rossville and Auburn to, let's say, the Peck Edition, southeast, it's significantly lower. So, does that answer your question, Commissioner? Yeah.
Anything else? Well, first of all, let me say that for every other department head that's come to see us, Commissioner Cook has mentioned that it's going to be a tough budget year, that not everybody gets everything they want, and it's tough all over. I noticed he didn't do that with the sheriff's office.
Thank you.
There's got to be a reason for that somewhere. Excellent presentation. I'd like to congratulate Major Hooper. I know a lot of times Shane would be bringing things before the commission, and I'd ask him a question before we went in, and he'd say, I don't know. But he always got the answer, which was very impressive. I think the crime trend is very disturbing. And I hope we're taking really solid, proactive steps to address that. And one other thing, you mentioned social media and getting in touch. We need to communicate, not just the sheriff's office, but Shawnee County as a whole. Health Department, Public Works, Parks and Rec, we need to better communicate with the public to let them know what we're doing and how we're doing it, and tell the successes that we have along the way. That's very important.
Agreed.
Okay? Betty, what do you have? Anything?
Nothing. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you for coming this morning, or this afternoon. And our next budget hearing is at 2 o'clock with emergency management.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Again.
Thank you.
So here, the difference between this and this was 271. We need to take off the
Okay.
vest. So
Okay.
it takes it down to that.
So has that
Brother
been
Darren.
sent to us? No. So do you want me to go ahead and do that? Yes. Okay. Thanks.
Did they really? Yeah.
We didn't say anything.